Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. This week and next week, we are making our way through the Beatitudes, those beautiful and yet confounding verses at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus had gathered the people around him. He sat down on the top of the hill and began to speak. The second Beatitude, he said, is, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." I ran across the story of a funeral home that in 2012 wanted to install a Starbucks for mourners to make use of to help them take their minds off their grief. They actually held a contest to try to come up with a name for their coffee corner. Some of the suggestions were the Grim Roaster, Decoffinated, Purgatory, and See You Latte. Something about all that just seems wrong, doesn't it? You know from your own experience that grieving is painful and difficult, and certainly not something to make jokes about. And for those of us who have mourned the death of a loved one, there is hope and strength in Jesus' promise that we will be comforted. But that's not all that Jesus is talking about. Jesus is also talking about a deeper mourning that arises from our faith. As one scholar puts it, those who grieve do so because they have some vision of the world God intends, a world set free for exchanges of love, a world for glad partying among all the children of God. But they suffer because God's will is not done, and we are all captive to our alienations. Weep, for the world is not as it should be. Jesus is speaking of this mourning too. It is to be filled with grief at our brokenness, both as individuals and as a people together. It is to grieve the hurts, the fear, the isolation and alienation we feel from each other. It is to know real sorrow over our inward focus and selfishness, our greed and our sin. It is to weep that we are not who God intends us to be. Maybe that's not something we've ever mourned over, but Jesus is inviting us to so earnestly desire the kingdom of God that our hearts are broken over our brokenness. But we will be comforted. God will set things right and will do so in Jesus. In his brokenness on the cross, our brokenness is healed. We are loved. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.